Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a skill that, let's be honest, most of us think we've already mastered. But what if we're only scratching the surface? We're going to be using Mortimer Adler's classic guide, How to Read a Book, to completely reframe how we look at reading, moving from just passively consuming words to the powerful art of active reading.
Okay, let's just stop and unpack this for a second. It's a pretty bold statement, right? Adler's using the original Greek meaning of sophomore, which is literally wise fool, to call out a specific type of person. You know the one. The person who's read everything but understood very little. He calls them bookful blockheads, and it's this idea that just collecting facts doesn't actually make you any smarter.
And this, right here, is the core problem Adler is trying to solve. I mean, think about it. We are drowning in information. It's everywhere. But he makes this brilliant point that having too many facts can be just as big a problem as having too few. The real goal isn't just to be informed, it's to be enlightened.
So how do we get there? How do we go from being overwhelmed with facts to actually gaining some real understanding? Well, here's our game plan. We're going to follow Adler's framework. First, we'll tackle that huge difference between information and understanding. Then, we'll get into his 4 levels of reading, all the way from just quickly sizing up a book to having a deep conversation with it and even making multiple authors debate each other. This is our roadmap. Okay, first things first, we have to nail down this one crucial distinction. It's the foundation for this whole way of thinking. It's all about the difference between just having facts and truly getting what they mean.
So here's the breakdown. Information is just knowing that something is true. But understanding, that's knowing why it's true. I love the visual here. Think of information as a box full of random puzzle pieces. Sure, you have them, but they don't mean much. Understanding is when you start clicking those pieces together and the whole picture emerges. Information gets you in the door, but understanding is the reason you came.
Adler's big idea is that reading isn't just one simple activity. No, it's a skill, an art form, really, with 4 totally distinct levels, and each one demands more from you than the last. This analogy is just perfect. When you're first learning to ski, you're so conscious of every little thing. Bend my knees, don't cross the tips. It feels awkward, right? But you keep practicing, and eventually all those rules just become a part of you. You don't think, you just ski. Reading is exactly the same. The goal is to get so good at these techniques that they become second nature.
So here they are, the 4 levels. We all get through elementary reading in school. That's just basic literacy. But it's these next 3 levels where the real transformation happens. They're like building blocks, taking you from a quick scan of a book to a deep, meaningful dialogue with it, and finally, to a place where you're having a conversation with many authors all at once.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. This is the first active level of reading, inspectional reading, and I love this concept. It's basically learning how to give a book an X-ray to see its whole skeleton before you decide if you're going to perform surgery.
Now, the most important word on this slide is systematically. This is not your lazy, flip through the pages kind of skimming. No way. This is a strategic survey. Adler calls it a threshing process. It helps you quickly separate the important ideas from the fluff. And honestly, it's the best tool you have for deciding if a book is actually worth your most precious resource, your time.
So how do you actually do it? Here's the cheat sheet. You start with the simple stuff, the title, the preface. Then you study the table of contents. That's the book's blueprint. Check the index to see what the author thinks is important. You follow these steps, and you can get a shockingly good grasp of what a book is about in less than an hour, sometimes in just 15 minutes. It's a game changer.
Okay, so you've X-rayed a book and decided, yep, this one's worth it. Now you move up to level 3, analytical reading. This is where you stop being a spectator and start having a deep, demanding dialogue with the author.
This is such a great question. You can't just raise your hand and ask for clarification, right? And that's the whole point. A book forces you to do the heavy lifting. When you ask a book a question, as Adler says, you have to be the one to answer it. You have to think, you have to analyze, you have to connect the dots yourself. This comparison says it all. Look at the passive reader on the left. They're just leaning back, waiting to be fed information. But the active reader on the right, they are leaning in. They're asking questions, they're working, their mind is fully fired up. It's a complete shift from being a passive container for facts to being an active partner in a conversation.
And this is so important. After you've put in the effort, after you've really struggled to understand an author's argument on their own terms, you've earned the right to have the final say. You can agree, you can disagree, you can even say, I'm not sure yet, but you get to be the judge. And now we climb to the very peak of the reading mountain, syntopical reading.
This is where you go from being a student of a single book to becoming a master of an entire subject.
This is the most challenging, but also the most rewarding level of reading. You're not just trying to figure out what one author has to say anymore. You're using a whole library of books to dissect a single topic. You're basically putting authors who might have lived centuries apart in the same room and moderating their debate.
And there's a real structure to it. First, you have to hunt through all your books to find the passages that are relevant to your topic. Then, and this is key, you have to create a common vocabulary so the authors can even talk to each other. From there, you figure out the big questions they're all wrestling with, and finally, you step back and analyze the entire discussion to form your own incredibly informed perspective.
So after all that, what's the ultimate goal here? It's not just about changing how you read. It's about changing how you think. It's about becoming a truly demanding reader.
This quote just cuts right through the noise, doesn't it? Being well-read has nothing to do with the number of books you've finished. It's all about the quality of the engagement. Someone who has wrestled with 10 great books is infinitely better educated than someone who has just passively skimmed 1,000. It's the depth that sharpens your mind, not the quantity.
And that really is the biggest takeaway from all of this. The point of active reading isn't just to finish books. It's to let great books begin something inside of you. It's an invitation to join a conversation with the greatest minds in history, a conversation that will challenge you and change you. So the only real question left is the one you see on the screen. What great book will you start a conversation with?